Hi, and welcome back to AQA Paper 2 for English Language, question 4. Where we left off was focusing on a snippet from Language Paper 2 mock exam question, a made-up paper, of course. And what I'd like to do now is to talk you through how to make notes, how to annotate, and most importantly, how to organize your paragraphs in answer to question 4 paper 2 for English language. So whenever you're annotating, you need to underline and surround any important adjectives, verbs, metaphors, personification, language techniques by telling me, well, the examiner, what the writer's message is through that technique. So you should circle those techniques used. Most importantly, write down around that technique what the message is about the thing that you're comparing. So for this mock exam, this mini mock, we're comparing how the writers are presenting fearful circumstances. They're different attitudes and experiences towards fearful circumstances. Now, in source A, if you've watched part 1 of this, you'll know what I'm talking about. In source A, we have a writer who has a celebratory tone. He likes to celebrate the fact that he found the climb of Mount Everest quite challenging yet achievable. He refers to the ease with which he breathed at the very beginning. And the overall message about fearful experiences is that they were not as fearful for Sir Edmund Hillary as any member of the public could imagine, because he was very fit in those days. Let's move on. However, now we should be annotating and underlining any similes, metaphors, verbs, adjectives, nouns, all those word classes. You should learn them and revise them off by heart because they do come in handy, because what we really value is your interpretation of the writer's message through those techniques. In source B, the writer takes on an autobiographical approach to describing the numerous fearful circumstances she had confronted. She has a stereotypical presentation of a female climber not feeling quite physically strong enough to take on the mountain climbing experience. In contrast to source A, these are just notes. Source B describes how she crept, and one simple look at the round horn of rock had caused her to feel perfectly sick. She describes how she was scaling, not climbing. Whereas source A, Sir Edmund Hillary, describes how he was pretty well adapted and acclimatized to the altitude. So you've got those completely different tones, different points of view about the same task, ultimately, of climbing a mountain. Here's an example answer. Both source A and source B, it's good for you to start off that way because you're trying to tell the examiner, I am comparing both sources. I am aware of what the question is, so use the question as an answer. So the question here is different reactions to fearful circumstances, and that's exactly what I've used here in this starting sentence. And this is by no means a perfect paragraph. This is just an example of a basic solid paragraph that will get you good marks. Source A, however, is an interview. Remember, ask yourself, what type of text am I reading for source A? What type of text am I reading for source B? And how does that impact the message to the reader in relation to the essay question? So if we have an interview, interviews are normally used to celebrate an individual, to praise an individual, where an individual is really proving themselves to the audience or to the interviewee. However, an autobiography is normally personal, and it's when a writer really communicates their vulnerability, their mistakes, and their fears. And that's what we get in source B. So let's read on. Source A, however, is an interview presenting Sir Edmund Hillary as a stereotypically manly individual, celebrating his strength and lack of fear towards his past challenge of having had to climb Mount Everest, as he was very fit in those days. On the other hand, could have used a paragraph space there, but anyway. Source B presents an autobiographical account of a Victorian explorer, Isabella Bird, and her difficult life-threatening climb of the American Matterhorn. Now, there's nothing saying that you will get marks for historical references. However, we should try and aim to show the examiner that you do have a basic grasp of historical knowledge and that climbing a mountain in the Victorian times is pretty tough, and that could also add to why Isabella Bird found it incredibly difficult in comparison to someone climbing it in 1953. Anyway, reading on, her difficult, life-threatening climb of the American Matterhorn. She presents a stereotypically feminine reaction to the task of climbing heights as she describes how she felt perfectly sick and dizzy just looking at the rock. Source B uses emotive language. However, source A uses understatement to describe how they dealt with the fearful circumstance of climbing different mountains. Notice how I've linked back to the question, making sure the examiner is aware that I have compared both of the extracts for their presentation of mountain climbing and the fearful circumstances involved. Now, the success criteria is here available for you to look at. We have language analysis, structural analysis is acceptable, not exactly brilliant. Short embedded quotes, yes, but there's always space for more. We don't have many short embedded quotes. References to different perspectives, absolutely. Source A says this, however, source B says that. Repetitive reference to the essay question, yes, we have a repetitive reference to fearful circumstances. Structural analysis, clear point sentence, clear link sentence, and comparison connectives. Yep, however, on the other hand, so it seems to be pretty good. A solid kind of acceptable answer. Let's move on and consider another answer. Here we go. So here's another one. Both sources A and B present their different experiences of climbing different mountains. Okay, this is just going straight to the point. It could have added different mountains and their fearful circumstances just to show the examiner I am aware of the question, I am answering the question. Source A presents in an interview Sir Edmund's calm and logical recount of his past successful climb of Mount Everest. On the other hand, Source B presents an autobiographical recollection of climbing the American Matterhorn as an emotional and fearful circumstance. Source B showcases Isabella's fearful circumstance, notice the repetition of the keyword in the question, use the question as an answer, of climbing the American Matterhorn as an event filled with beauty and danger. She describes the smooth, cracked face of pink granite. These contrasting adjectives manage to represent how at once the climb was majestic and terrifying. Look at how we're using the techniques when we're thinking about the message to the reader. What is the writer's point of view? However, Source A's interview with Sir Edmund Hillary concentrates on the ease with which he completed his climb through his repetitive use of direct address. And here is where the student could have added, you puff and pant as you climb. As a short embedded quote to prove that point. But anyway, to demonstrate how, unlike the public, he was very well adapted and acclimatized to climbing the mountain. This demonstrates how Source A understates the climb of Mount Everest as a circumstance that he had previously prepared very well for in advance. Now, understatement is basically the opposite of hyperbole because it tries to take away the shock and real emotional words expected and associated with a particular event. So, for example, if someone achieved band 9 for everything, they'll be like, yeah, I passed my examinations. That is an understatement because they did not just pass their examinations, they passed them with flying colours. Reading on. This stands in stark contrast to Source B's perspective of the American Matterhorn, and it's really good to use phrases like stark contrast to Source B's perspective, viewpoint, attitude, because that again is telling the examiner I am aware of the question and I know that I'm supposed to compare their different points of view on the similar topic, okay? Source B uses the dehumanizing verb crept to exemplify their fear of the mountain. Isabella uses sensory language as she beheld it, the American Matterhorn, only to feel perfectly sick. Now, what we have here is, again, zooming into that language and considering structure at the same time would be useful by mentioning that a long, complex sentence was used to communicate the complexity of the climb and the overwhelming emotions she's been experiencing just looking at the mountain. Source A instead uses understatement to refer to the dozens of people who have died in the crevices, and this fearful circumstance is further understated as Sir Edmund Hillary refers to only one similar experience with a self-critical remark as he wasn't thinking too carefully. But in essence, you've got 16 marks. Let's be honest, you're going to write this about 3 to 4 short paragraphs, and you need to make sure that you've got your points, you've got your evidence, you've got your analysis of language and structure, effect on reader, writer's message, and then you go again to the next paragraph. You've got your comparative connective, you've got your question as an answer, you've got your short quotes embedded, and you've got your analysis of language and structure, effect on reader, writer's message. Boom, you should do very well in this question by practicing under timed conditions. So please set yourself, 20 minutes, 25 minutes maximum if it's two extracts that you haven't seen before, to really attempt such a task, okay? And I wish you the very best of luck. Obviously, I will be creating more videos to support your revision, and I will be creating videos on questions 1, 2, and 3 for paper 2 as well as question 5. Okay, wishing you the best of luck. Thank you. And if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please be wise and subscribe, and press the like button. Thank you so much.